Hey guys, welcome back. VTCKR here. We're back with Season 9, Episode 6 of our weekly Q&A videos. If you're on YouTube right now, links in the description on all the major podcasting platforms. If you are on one of the major podcasting platforms and you don't know about our YouTube channel, at this point it's too late. There's no helping you. So anyways, getting into the first question of the week. This one comes from Bent Walls, and they say, "Hi again. Do you guys think it's worth it to develop or even to leave a specific team on defense?"
Personally, I guess there's two ways to answer this. Personally or in general?
Yeah. So, is it worth it? Maybe. It's free, right? Is the thing. Is that, any battle points you get from your defensive team has cost you no actual playing, right? So,
no playing.
The real question is, how often are you going in and needing to switch it and then switch it back?
Yeah.
And how long does that take you? And then how much battle points can you reliably earn from it?
That's the thing. Don't think you can reliably get battle points. I mean, they're great because you're getting double the amount. Like if you're playing and winning, you max out at 5,000. When you're on defense and winning, that's 10,000 for a fight.
Yeah.
Which is very attractive. However, you hit the point exactly right. Like the most important thing is how much time do you spend playing? And if you dedicate a huge amount of time, I mean, it goes back to, I think, this part where you get rewarded for not playing.
Yeah.
Like for being away from the game. And I think for me, I play so haphazardly that I play, a few stolen moments here, a few stolen moments there, and then to even plan a defensive team,
It'd be hard.
It's wastes more time.
So, yeah, it makes the most sense if you play in big bursts and you want to leave people in while you're not playing. But really, the time that it would make the most sense is if you weren't going to play for most of a season, and then you plan to spend a day towards the end racking up all the points you needed to win.
Yeah.
Because, if you can't, it's not going to be the difference between, a percent barrier in all likelihood. You're going to have to do most of the playing by yourself to earn those points up.
Right.
Probably, right?
Right.
And so what you really need to think about is that there's not a lot of circumstances in which you're actually getting much of a noticeable benefit. And that used to not be true when there's a lot more players and a lot more people who weren't, necessarily as good, because more of the players who are higher on stats now have been that way for a while, right? Who are probably a lot more competent, a lot more capable of winning every fight they're up against, or most fights they're up against. So it's harder to earn wins from people as consistently, too.
And there used to be one specific team that would draw the most fights.
Yeah.
And even if your win percentage on defense was poor, all you need to do was have enough people fight you. If you were winning only 10% of your defensive fights and you were drawing 1,000 fights, which we've done in some seasons way back when. And I think that was Darkseid, the crappy one.
Yeah.
The one that's actually out of the challenge rotation. Shazam and Godfall Superman.
Yeah.
And they would attract the most number of fights. And I think that was because the algorithm treated them as the most dangerous team, even though they weren't really that good.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't have synergy. I guess the other thing, too, is when you're doing that kind of planning and you have so little control over it, I find it a little bit frustrating not to be able to not so much decide, but control what happens. Because let's say your team is really that good. You know what happens? Some people will just quit before the fight finishes. Mm-hmm. And so you might be drawing fights. You just won't be winning them, and you won't even see them the stats in your final season total, because you need to have a team that's competitive enough that they'll win, but not so overwhelming that people will say, screw that, and feel like they didn't have a chance, or just even skip out of the fights before they even face you.
Yeah, so in our opinion, I guess along the short of it is that I don't think it is super worth it. But we will get into, comments later from people talking about teams that they have trouble facing. Yeah, as long as we have time.
And if it matters to you, I mean, that's not a bad thing. I mean, that's our personal opinion. If it matters to you get defensive fights, one of the best ways to decide what kind of team to put in defense, take a look at what you don't like to face in offense, and try to lean into that, because what you know is that the AI is going to typically use power when it's got it. So you focus on special ones. Mm-hmm. The AI doesn't plan when they tag in and tag out. So having a team that relies on that is not a great strategy.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that that the AI finishes their combo even when you block.
Mm-hmm.
So teams that are set up to take advantage of combo enders are better.
Yeah.
Not so much better, but they're better on the AI than they are with you, because they get more of the combo ender abilities, whether it's draining on Razzle Scimitar or damage over time or stun, or like with Black Snake Hawk, like stuff like that. And so those are the things that are useful.
And block breaks also have more chances to trigger.
Right, because they finish their combo. They just get more hits.
Basic damage, block breaks specifically have a higher chance to trigger.
Yeah. So those are things. It just makes sense. Like when you see it, the stuff that people complain about, those are things that you want to take advantage of in defensive battles and setting up a defensive team.
Yeah, and it can be its own little act of planning, so there can be some joy in it. And there can be some, some rewards. You want to fight here or there maybe. But in general, we'd like playing a lot more. And just, again, I think the main thing that it comes down to is, theoretically you could play a bunch on the first day or on the last day. And then use those defensive wins to supplement. But it only makes sense if you play on the last day, because if you play early, you don't know how much points you're going to get, if any.
Right.
So it's an unknown quantity. And not playing it all week so that you can play to the end, so that you can leave multiplayer characters in, isn't that compelling of a pitch. And most defensive teams are not as good on offense, so you're not necessarily only going to want to play with that one, so that your defensive team always stays in and you never need to switch it.
Although I'll say the Flashpoint team is pretty good on defense too.
That's true.
And one thing I also want to point out is that how much you play in a season also affects how much you draw in terms of defensive battles. So I've seen this, we play on a number of accounts, and the account that you leave fallow, not playing at all, you'll see you still draw a decent amount of defensive fights for the first season you don't play, and then it steadily drops off each time to the point where it falls off the map completely.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind too. It's not, even if you're relying on defensive fights, it's not a panacea for all that ails your lack of battle points. You need to actually play to even maximize your defensive points.
Although it's probably not a how much you play exactly. It's probably just participating at all, I would guess.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's quite right.
So there we go. And the next question comes from Ian Connor, and they say, "Hey BDCKR, I was wondering who I should start augmenting with crit chance and crit damage first. Flashpoint Batman, Flashpoint Deathstroke, or Batman Ninja Catwoman, as crits are important on all three of these characters."
Well, who are you going to be playing? That's sort of the stupid, the dumb answer that's actually the most true.
Yeah.
Who are you going to play?
Who do you like the most?
Yeah, what are you going to do most of them? Now, so if your strategy is you're going to decide based on who you augment and who's going to be better, then out of those three... All right, so let's take a look at this. Flashpoint Batman would seem like the... So here's the thing, actually, I should take a step back. Augmentations are tough because they're not like gears. You've committed, they're used, that's it. You can't pull them back and change your mind and spend them on somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So you really want to make sure you're playing them. Out of the two Flashpoint characters, I'm going to go out on a limb that may not be the popular opinion. I'm going to say you actually should augment Deathstroke. Because the way we set up the team, so Flashpoint Batman is the guy who's got the extra boosted crit damage.
Yeah.
But so does Deathstroke if they're on the same team. So if you're going to separate them, not Deathstroke, but if they're going to be on the same team, to me, Deathstroke, as long as you're using him as your specialist, and he is generating the most damage in a fight, that's what you want to augment, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't... If you augment somebody, you're not going to use them less.
And
I think the way we structured, even though Flashpoint Batman is sort of the linchpin, if without him, the Flashpoint team kind of sucks, but with him, Deathstroke is the guy.
Okay.
Batman Nj Catwoman, though, is an interesting decision because she stands on her own. And it really does come down to how much you play them. Are you going to play a Flashpoint team more often, or are you going to play Batman Nj Catwoman more often? Who are you going to be spending your recharges on?
Yeah.
And so to me, it's a toss-up between Deathstroke and Batman Nj Catwoman, because when she engages her passive, her boosted damage is as good as Flashpoint Batman's, although I think she only boosts her basics and not her specials. Flashpoint boosts everything. So if it were me, I'd play the Flashpoint team more, and I would put on Flashpoint Deathstroke. But if your Batman Nj Catwoman seems to have a better synergy with the teams that you want to play her, and you play her more, you put it on her.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there we go. Our next question comes from Corin Com, who I always want to call Corin Corn.
Oh, right. It's the
It's
kerning.
the kerning. We've had
Yes.
this exact conversation before. Every single time, though.
Okay.
I'm moments away from calling them corn.
So it's a non. Did we talk about this? That it's a sans. That's the French.
Yeah, we
sans serif.
had this exact
Okay.
conversation. I'm pretty sure.
But kerning is an interesting word because before this, I would have thought there's certain words where the combination of letters doesn't look right,
Yeah.
and kerning, Kern.
Yeah.
The first time I realized that I learned the word, it felt like it was not a word.
But it's like kernel.
Yeah, but it's missing the part. Like there's something about it.
It's like one of the spellings of kernel. It's like, and the other one, which looks like it should be
colonal,
colonel,
colon L, lieutenant, yeah, corncom. Okay,
corn. And they say, is the BN, and in this case they mean Batman Ninja,
We think he
team
does.
good without Batman Ninja Batman? As I check the wiki and challenge cycle page, and I can't find a way to get him. So is Batman Ninja, Nightwing, Joker, and Catwoman good? Also, if you change your time offline or don't connect to the internet, can you prolong your Survivor Gear rewards? Also, Happy New Year. So, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. No, you can't. All right, so the easy questions first is no, you can't prolong your Survivor Gear rewards because when you are disconnected from the internet, the default reward from Survivor cycles back to, I believe it's the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, so that's what you said is technically not true. If the reward is currently Suicide Squad, you can prolong it as long as you want.
Oh, I guess that's true. Right. You can play Suicide Squad as long as you want, but those aren't the attractive ones. None of them are chase. So out of all the gear rewards in Survivor, except for the Suicide Squad ones, one of them is more rare. One of them is the chase variant, I guess, or whatever, like you'd find in action figure packages. And so if you're going to be trying to prolong it, I can't imagine anybody's trying to prolong Suicide Squad gear ones.
But technically you could.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, sure. Yeah, you're right. I hadn't thought of it like that. So, and we're making a guess that BN stands for is being used consistently. So the first time that Corin says, is the BN team good without BN Batman? Because that could still be Blackest Night. It would still work.
Yeah.
But they mentioned BN Nightwing. There's only Batman Ninja. BN Joker. There's only Batman Ninja Joker. And same with Catwoman.
Yeah.
So, is the Blackest Night team good without Blackest Night Batman? I think so. I think I was going to say Blackest Night. A Batman Ninja team is great as long as it has Catwoman, because she is, to me, bar none, without a doubt, the best Blackest Night character.
Absolutely. Batman Ninja.
Yeah, Batman Ninja. Did I say
You
Blackest
said
Night?
Blackest Night again.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the interesting thing, right? What people focus on is sort of the spectacular things. Remember we talked about last week about sometimes it's not all about winning. It's not all about winning as fast as possible. Mm-hmm. I think Batman Ninja Batman is exactly that, because what's interesting about him, what people play up a lot, is that his Special 2 is the only Special 2 that is front loaded with a stun.
Yeah.
So that when he has Cloak of Destiny or Necron Scythe and he does an unblocked Special 2, he does a huge, catastrophic amount of damage on a Special 2 that
pretty redonkulous.
Yeah, pretty redonkulous. And if you gear him to splash a little bit, you could wipe out a team. Now, the problem is it's 2 bars. Anytime you're relying on a 2-bar special as your main damage dealer, you don't have a lot of room for mistakes. No buffer for a problem. Not like a Special 1 specialist like a Batgirl or Flashpoint Deathstroke. Mm-hmm. So it's spectacular, but I think as a strategy to build a winning team around where you win fights really quickly, I think Batman Nj Catwoman is better. And if her teammates do absolutely nothing else, they give her 2 more chances from getting knocked out. Mm-hmm. So if you just have deadweight Batman Ninja teammates, that's what you get. She is spectacular. What you can do is, if you want to make her a little bit hardier, is that when she tags out, you can give her, gauntlets. Mm. So that she tags back in, she can get a little bit of health back every time she does a little combo ender, and she can get 1 or 2 in easily. Yeah. And she's pretty spectacular.
So there we go. Our next question comes from Fire Breather, and they say, what's the clip at the end for? And I'm assuming they mean that little clip of you walking with Lobo sitting in your pocket.
Yeah. If anybody wants to take a guess to figure out what country we're in when we did that, that'll be a nice kind of trivia question.
I know.
I do too.
Wow.
But no, and yeah, so Lobo was in my pocket. So that Lobo, for people who don't know, I've always liked Lobo as a character design.
He's our channel art.
He's our channel avatar.
Yeah.
But it's not art from that. Not so much as something that was drawn, but it was art that you created.
Well, created is a strong word. It's I snapped a picture. Well, it was already our icon, but it was just a normal icon. Like, it was just a picture of the thing, and then I literally just put it through like the threshold filter in Photoshop so that it was either black or white, and then tooled that to the level that I wanted, just that we had black and white, and then we made his eyes red. But
it's a little plush toy of Lobo.
Yeah.
And we took it with us when we went traveling one time, and we took pictures and video of him in different situations, and we lost him.
Yeah. And so there's no specific reason it's there. It's only just to have something for the links.
Right.
That's just approximately the right length for the links, so that there's nothing else, so that we can just put a little bumper at the end.
Right.
But what that's reminded me of, thinking about the links, when I was thinking about this question, I was like, oh, why would they not know that the links are there? And then I'm like, well, maybe not. But I'm like, is there any way that the links wouldn't show up? And I was thinking, is that on mobile? And I was like, no, they show up on mobile now, don't they?
Oh, yeah, they do. Yeah,
and so, I was like, yeah, they totally show up on mobile. And then what that reminded me of was, do you remember the old days where YouTube had those little like sticky note things that you could put on videos that would just pop up, that the video creator, I forgot what those are called.
Right. So you could put up like tags, like little text boxes that were clickable and could have information.
You could have clickable text boxes, or you could have like speech bubbles, like boxes.
Right.
And what I think they probably got rid of those because it was for the mobile, right? For displaying on mobile, and that's why they had but that used to be how people would do end cards, is you'd have animated video links, and then you'd put up a transparent box around it, and then do it themselves. And so then you could click on the link and it would follow you to that. And then every big creator, or not every big creator, but a huge number of big creators were doing it manually, where they're literally like editing it together so that there was a couple of mini, picture-in-picture windows.
And even little ones. We did that for a bit.
Yeah. And then, and then linking to them. And so then they implemented the functionality, they standardized it, but they took away those little cards. And I remember it very nostalgically because they were the ones that were used in the middle of videos were almost never used to good effect. The only thing they ever did was make a video seem incredibly amateur, and then sometimes even maybe ruin the video. Because there would be so many, right?
Right.
Don't you remember every once in a while you'd see a video and it would be some like meme video, and there would be those little notes like just smeared all over the frame, and it would absolutely take away from the video. It was like the pop-ups. It was almost like having pop-ups on a YouTube video of people's inane comments instead of spam advertisements. And it was almost always terrible.
So guilty as charged. So again, if we're going to be nostalgic here, back in the day when we were starting off and our channel was mainly unboxing videos.
Yeah.
And I thought that the value added to our unboxing videos compared to others was literally comparisons.
Yeah.
So I would keep, running totals on the value and the cost and stuff. So that would smear all over the video with the list of titles of what we were getting, what it would cost if I could find it in the store or online, and then doing a tally as I went. And clearly I've, gotten lazier and developed a different aesthetic as we've gone along. But I remember
But you did those
days.
Baked in, right? Did you do those over top in those little cards?
I think I might have started off doing the cards, then I went into baking it in through Windows Movie Maker, and then gotten away from that completely.
Because that's the thing, is that kind of information can be done really well and framed really well in the video. But those little card pop-ups, I think the way that they were there were almost always kind of unpleasant to look at. And the way that YouTube's done it now is so much better in terms of, UI and standardization, but I'm really nostalgic for those old things because it kind of just to be able to just slap on a bunch of random garbage on top.
Yeah.
And the way people would like advertise like other videos sometimes, they'd be like, my next video on this is already out, and you just have to, you know, click here for part 2. And again, almost never a meaningful addition to the content. But it was still an addition. It was still extra content. And it makes me sad that they're gone now because they stopped letting people use them after a certain point. And then a certain point after that, they stopped
supporting at all. Like, I think the old ones, are they still on the old ones?
No, they've disappeared now. I'm almost certain of. And so it's a little sad. It's always weird when something goes on the internet. And sometimes it's like a terrible thing that gets dropped on the internet and no one's sad for it. And in this case, it's kind of bad, but it's just not bad enough that I feel sad that it's gone.
Right. I gotcha.
Because it's mediocre at best.
That really is nostalgia, where you're missing something not because it's good, but it's just because you miss it because it used to be there.
And I don't have any rose-colored glasses for it, clearly, because I still don't even like it.
Right.
But I just, it's unfortunate, and it always feels a little sad because those were parts of the fundamental watching experience. Right? And so part of what those videos were to a lot of people when they first watched it isn't there anymore.
Right.
And I think the best version of that you would get would be maybe like a screen grab of YouTube that included all of those things.
So it would be like if I missed, the bars on the TV when a channel went dead for the night, when they stopped broadcasting and that kind of stuff. I never see that anymore. Yeah. And I think kids growing up now, the only way they recognize it is because somebody told them or explained to them what it was and what it meant. It was not a good viewing experience to know that, there'd be like maybe one channel that would be on. Most of them would be off until the next morning. Yeah, it sucks. Yeah. That's like how I feel about a lot of Flash games. Is that because Flash is no longer supported. It's still playable. Most Flash games are still playable. You can either download them or have an extension. And I do have an extension because I'm nostalgic for Flash, but there's certain games where, especially if the sites go down for them, sometimes people have them saved in repositories, but how Flash games used to work sometimes, to drive traffic, they would have specific websites where you would get extra unlocks. And so there's one specific Flash game, Mike Shadow, I paid for it, which I'm very nostalgic about, who had this whole premium tier of upgrades that were locked behind playing it on mochigames.com, which is a website which no longer exists. Is Mochi Games the one that had Viking Defense? I feel like I've played on Mochi Games. Miniclip, I think. Oh, maybe it was Miniclip. I feel like I've tried Mochi. That sounds very familiar. I don't know if you've played anything on Mochi Games. Miniclip was the one that we played that Tarleton's game. And I mean, part of the way that those Flash games worked is they were often posted to a bunch of different websites. And you could sort of go to whichever different one you want. Right? There was a lot of cool stuff that was made back in the day. That was very sort of Wild West. I got a lot of value out of totally free content. It's hard not to get value when it's free. It's gotta be really bad to... No, I'm saying I had a great time, though. I had a great time with a lot of Flash games. And so it's a little sad now to have to play them in this really sort of haphazard, like cobbled together. Right. Like, is this going to support it? Is this going to work? And... apparently it's for a good reason because Flash was full of like security bugs and whatever. Right. It just not Apple great. Apple never supported Flash, right? Was that one of the things? Like I remember some was it Apple? Might have been Apple that just didn't support it. I don't remember because I seem to recall playing Flash games on my grandfather's Mac over at the condo sometimes. Oh. So I believe that I did play Flash games, but no. So it's always a little sad when stuff disappears, and I'm glad I can still play a lot of Flash games actually, but a little disappointing. So those old really crummy clips, I think from a time when YouTube was a lot rougher around the edges, right? And there's something to be said for that. I do want to point out something though as I'm looking at these questions that we've got pulled up. So for people who don't realize, these questions are probably a few weeks old from the comments, and we got away from trying to do new ones every time. Mainly because when we did that, we would run out of questions some weeks. Yeah. And what we've done is we're just keeping a running total. We keep going through them in order. But sometimes if there's something that's sort of really timely, we'll pull it up front. And it's... so if you're recognizing your question, say, hey, what's going on? That's what's going on. Yeah. And it's not that we're getting... that we've recorded this weeks ago. It's because we've been so what I'm going to try to do now is when there's a question that I like that I'm going to pull for the list, I'm going to put our little, what's that button thing that we click on to show that we are the ones that liked it?
The heart?
Yeah, the heart. So that's one thing. If we don't respond and we heart it, it's because we just like the comment, or maybe we're pulling it for the future Q&A.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it's a question and we heart it, we're not just being dicks, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I want to point that out because I feel like that could be a potential issue. And sometimes when I'm on the phone, I'm not inclined to try to struggle with my thick thumbs and write out, we've added this to our list. It's coming up. And it feels like it's a bit of a tease if it's going to be a few weeks away.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so, yeah, you're right. This is my I'm not a dick comment or defense.
Which is only helpful if people watch this specific part of this specific video.
I guess so.
But, okay, anyways. Our next comment comes from Ryzen Vacha, and they say, also, how the hell do you guys deal with Batman Ninja Catwoman so easily? I always run one of characters. I'm assuming... I always run one of characters with full LexCorp gear just to deal with her, and I still fail sometimes. And then the reply from Louis Lemieux says, on God, it's pretty much a run killer for me half the time.
Yeah. I think there was a question or a comment even that I didn't pull. Somebody had mentioned, oh, by the way, did you know that if you run LexCorp gear set with New 52 Superman and Batman Ninja Catwoman comes at you, you trigger your full passive, like all three, the boosts for your basic damage.
Yeah.
And I had not known that, and I wish I'd pulled the name so I could mention it. But I also know that that's not a great way to play New 52 Superman if I'm relying on her showing up and him facing her specifically just so I can get his passive to trigger, because otherwise he's kind of useless.
Yeah.
But so here's the thing. I think there's a few maybe big principles of playing that may not seem obvious, but are... I want to say it doesn't seem obvious to some people, but it feels like it's really obvious to me because I've played so long.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to give myself more credit for that than I deserve, because maybe people do get it and they just don't have the tool. I don't know what it is. All right, so here's the thing. 1, setting up one character to have LexCorp gear, if that's not what you're planning for anyways, and you're not going to be facing her for most of the fights, and in those fights that you're not facing her, that character is not that useful and you don't play them, bad strategy.
Yeah.
It's a waste of a slot, it's a waste of 3 gear slots, and it's a waste of, or 2, I think the reverse is only 2. It's a waste of 2 gear slots, and it's a waste of 1 character.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but you have to survive. So in order for that to happen, she's got to be attacking you. You're taking some damage. Even if you block it, you're only blocking 25% of her damage. When she's got her claws out, she's doing, I think, 300% boosted damage.
Yeah.
Again, not a good strategy. It's still defensive, and you're relying on that defensive part to generate some power for you. So, to me, the number one key is damage output. If you're focused on a team that for the defensive value, and you're not focused on maximizing your damage output from at least 2 of your characters, I think you're going to be screwed. Because you got to knock her out. That's why I think the strategy of having a Batman Ninja Catwoman on a Batman Ninja team is so much better, because
then you can't just whack her.
Right. So you do have to have a little bit of hardiness, but you can't do it at the expense of having damage output. So that's why there's certain things that make the Batman Ninja Catwoman on the opponent's team so much harder. One is having Batman Ninja teammates. So when you fly her solo with no other Batman Ninja teammates, you are compromising her ability a little bit.
Yeah.
2, what makes her harder, give her Astro Harness. When she tags in with invulnerability, you cannot... So one of the strategies for killing time, so you can survive until her passive disappears, right? And it can be as short as, I think, 8 seconds or as long as 21 seconds, depending on how much you've promoted her passive. 21 seconds is deadly. That's ridiculous, right?
It's a lot of time. And
it's going to happen, there's going to be a total of a minute. 21 seconds, 1, 2, 3 times if she's got 2 teammates that are going to save her from getting knocked out. And so one strategy, if she doesn't have Astro Harnesses, just offense. Full offense.
Yeah.
When you're attacking her, she can't hit you. It's her basics that matter. Her specials hurt, but nothing in particular, given that's not where her strength lies. So it hurts some, but not much more than any other character with a bunch of specials. It's her basics. So in order to keep her from doing basics, you do some specials. You hit her with the basic first. So instead of trying to block and let her drain all your power, take a chance. Try to hit her first. High risk, but also high reward. So that's why our Flashpoint Batman has Astro Harness, because if she's got Astro Harness to waste our time, we've got Astro Harness to waste her time. And we don't have to worry with Batman that in 21 seconds, his crit damage boost disappears. It doesn't. So he's better than her that way.
Yeah.
He doesn't drain power, but he can do more damage. What else? I think those are the sort of the key things, right?
Yeah.
You need somebody that can really wait her out, and you can wait her out with defense, or you can wait her out with offense, and my preference is to wait her out with offense.
And if you're waiting her out with offense, you're almost not waiting her out.
Yeah, and I guess the other part is that you need to have a team that's strong enough so that you got two people who have a high damage output, so that you can, if you lose somebody, and you're going to lose somebody, I think, just by attrition, like if she's geared properly, she's got the right crit augmentations, that she's going to take out one of your guys. Mm-hmm. And if she does, you need to make sure that your other guys are strong enough to be able to do the same to her team. Like, no matter how good her teammates are, you cannot let them take advantage of you. Mm-hmm. Does that cover? Is there anything else that makes it? Because she is hard, but on her own she's not. It's only when you gear her properly and give her the right teammates that she's really difficult.
Yeah. So there we go. I think that's
really it.
Yeah, and so we're just about wrapped up here. I do want to go through one more thing just because it's related to the stuff that I've been talking about. And this one comes from Paul Phillips. And they say, "Bro, how you running around when I'm on VR? I have no space." And this was a comment on a super hot tutorial video that I made a long time ago when Superhot first came out. I don't even remember, years ago at this point. But when the first PC full release version of Superhot initially came out. Right. And the reason why I say this is related to other stuff that we talked about is I talked about Flash games and nostalgia. I played Mike Shadow. I paid for it. There was an ice storm in Ontario. The power went out at our house and we had to spend Christmas over at a friend's house.
What year was that? 2013? 2013.
2013.
It went out for 5 days. Okay, can I say
was
this?
Was it 2013?
I think so. 2013 Ice Storm. But because I know your story is really good, but I want to point out the stuff that you did not have to worry about. So I kept on coming back to the house each day, even though we stayed with friends. I came back to the house each day because we had no heat. There was no hot water. I had to run the pipes to make sure the pipes in the walls did not freeze and then burst. And I turned on the fireplace to try to put enough heat around. And the temperature kept on dropping and dropping. And the day before Boxing Day. No, sorry. The day before Christmas Eve, actually. It was around Christmas. The day before Christmas Eve, I finally gave up because the temperature was about 1 degree and at the rate everything was dropping, it was going to drop below zero and stay below zero, and there's nothing I could do about it because the fireplace wasn't moving enough heat through the house to make a difference. Yeah. So I had to turn off the water, empty all the pipes, pour antifreeze down into each sink, because I don't know if people know, there's a little trap underneath each sink to keep air from, like sewage air from bubbling back up. And I think people think it's mainly to stop stuff so that if you lose it, you don't lose it forever. And it can work like that, but it's not, I don't think it's really meant for that. Same with the toilets. So I had to put antifreeze, because that's what I had, into each one so that if it did, it would lower the freezing temperature enough so that even when it hit zero,
the pipes wouldn't freeze.
Pipes wouldn't freeze. Our sink trap wouldn't freeze. Our toilet trap wouldn't freeze and crack the ceramic of the toilet. So that was, I can't tell you how stressful that was.
A lot of work.
It was a lot of stress. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
So as part of that, I talked about Mike Shadow. I paid for it specifically. So I was 5 days with a friend. We did a bunch of stuff. We tried to make Minecraft YouTube content that never saw the light of day because it sucked. And neither of us was ready to put the amount of work in to have a YouTube channel. Right. Funny how things have changed.
Right.
We played Mike Shadow. I paid for it and saw who could, hit some arbitrary threshold first. And one of the other things we did was that was the first time I played Super Hot. We sat down, we found Super Hot, and we played it together separately because it's a single player game, and saw who could get through it the fastest. So it's funny because it's come a really long way, and I've been following Super Hot, as I've mentioned before, like a while ago, for a really long time.
Right.
But that was sort of that Flash game era. They had an old version that they made for like a 48-hour like game jam or something like that.
Right.
And so it's funny that whoever was watching that video assumed that it was VR. Maybe wasn't even aware that there's a PC version. Because there's actually been a lot of versions of Super Hot throughout the years. So, because this person says, bro, how are you running around when I'm on VR? I have no space. So clearly they assumed that I was playing on VR. And, either they were from a different video where we mentioned playing Super Hot in VR and really enjoying it, or they just found it by themselves. But I just think it's really funny because Super Hot has 4 versions now. The OG Game Jam version, the sort of Super Hot Steam release, Super Hot Mind Control Delete, which is sort of a standalone side piece, and then Super Hot VR. And so I just think it's funny that for whoever this person was, Super Hot VR is the definitive edition. Because for me, I still have a lot of nostalgia for that old, really short, kind of, compared to the new ones, very crummy version.
Right.
Because when you would kill an enemy in that old version, the aesthetics were very basic. The reason why it was just red enemies and white background was because it was made in 48 hours, so they didn't have time to, do anything super complicated with it. And when you killed enemies, instead of the really cool, stylish, flashy thing now, where they shatter into a million pieces, and it's all like red and white, like crystal lights reflecting, and it's awesome. The old version, when you killed them, they would just disappear by, like, rings would pull slide out along them, and they'd disappear like a candy cane, like little ring stripes of red rings. It was literally just, I think, the simplest way of getting the model off your screen, and they would still fall back and ragdoll a little bit, so it's cool, but it was so much more basic. So it's funny how far we've come. That for Paul Phillips, his default experience with it is the VR version, which is cool and slick as hell and awesome. And my sort of, what I think of as the OG Super Hot is like a really simple, cobbled together 48-hour game. Okay, so
not even entirely related, but that feeling of when you come to something, and even though whatever this category of thing is, the first one that you hit, it always seems the best because you never get that moment of discovery again. And I can think of 2 writers like that where I know that objectively they've got other books that are better.
Is one Dan Simmons?
No.
Oh, okay.
One is Jonathan Carroll.
Okay.
He does this weird sort of fantasy realism.
Yeah.
And there's a bizarre, but, grounded in the present day kind of thing.
Yeah.
At the moment that it was written. And Sleeping in Flame is always my favorite Jonathan Carroll book. I know that I've read his other books. They are, in a lot of other ways,
better.
Maybe better. I can almost, I'm not an expert to be able to say objectively it's better or not. But
and then who's the other?
Guy Gavriel Kay.
Okay.
And I know in my mind, Lions of Al Rassan is such a brilliant book.
Yeah.
It is so good. But Tagana was the first Guy Kay book I read, and it always has a special place in my heart. And I just love that book unreservedly. I love that book, I think, way more than I should, given how good some of his other books are. It's still my favorite.
So you're saying you love it not more than it deserves, but more than it deserves potentially comparatively. The fact that you still compare it so favorably to his other stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's to me. That's like this.
Super Hot's OG version wasn't even the best, though. I think the VR version is the best by far. It's so cool in a way that.
Oh, I know that's not what you're saying. That's why I'm saying it's not quite the same idea, but it made me think of that. Where there's some things where it's not so much that it's the best, but it's how it's defined in his mind as what the absolute sort of what real Super Hot is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was just funny, and I thought it was worth mentioning. Play the OG Super Hot, though, if you've played the other versions. It's weird to come back to it, but it's also kind of cool how quickly and competently they made a game that was still a huge amount of fun, and a game that they were able to like take like one of the levels from and like just put it wholesale into the tutorial of the full release.
But see, I think when you say it only took how many hours to make that, the key to me is for that they came up with a real novel action game mechanic, and once you have that idea, it doesn't take a lot to really, as long as you've implemented it right, you can have a really fun game doing nothing else except for that. Like it's neat that they came up with something just totally new,
really fresh.
Very few games ever do that.
Yeah, it was really special. Yeah, I mean, a good idea when you hit a really good idea for a mechanic and stuff for a game. I think a lot of the rest of it, as long as you do a half competent thing, the right sort of core will make it really shine. Right. Yeah. So anyways, that's all we have time for this week, but I just figured we'd talk about Superhot for a minute before we hit to the end, because it sort of ties into that Flash game stuff. I don't know if the OG Superhot is a Flash game. I haven't tried to go back to it. I might not be able to play it properly anymore. Genuinely. Right. But anyways, to finish up, I'd like to give a shout out to Aliza, Macho Man, Randy Savage, Caton. Oh yeah, brother.
You know what's funny is that we never got that shout out while we're still doing WWE Immortals.
Yeah. And this shout out was brought to you by, I don't know, wrestling or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
I still remember Steamboat, I can't remember his name. You know, there was Ric Flair, there was King Kong, Mosca. I don't know. Old days. You know what? Some Saturdays there was nothing else on TV except for wrestling when you got past the cartoons. So Saturday afternoons, just because I had nothing else to do, I would sit around and lay on the couch, fall asleep in the heat of the sun through the window, watching wrestling.
Like
sometimes.
A cat.
Like a cat.
Okay, and we'd also like to give a shout out to all the lovely folks who support us on Patreon.
That would be Victor Gomez, Consul Peasant, and Ed Wound at the top tier Last Word, Cinemac and Muhammad Al-Shady at the Your Message Here tier, Sean Farrell, Daniel Simonson, Aaron Mall, Michael DeVries, Brandon C., Irvin Ruiz, and Eddie Du at the credited level, and Chris Wolf, Scarlett Danny, Awesome Gamer 241, Pavu RS, Gavin Malott, and Isfar E. at the gratitude level.
Thank you so much for your support, and we'll see you next time.
Komoda.